What is going on? Welcome back to another episode of It's a Blast podcast. My name is Mike, also known as the EOD Happy Captain on X. If you like the content I'm producing, please like and subscribe and follow along. Today, I'm sitting down with Jeff Truex, a good friend of mine who runs a nonprofit called After the Long Walk, aimed at ending EOD veteran suicide. Let's get started. Welcome to the It's a Blast podcast. My name is Mike. Here, I talk to members of the veteran and military community about their leadership style and how the military has affected their lives. Let's get started. What is going on? I am sitting down with my good friend, Jeff Truex. He is a retired Army Explosive Ordnance Disposal technician and currently runs a 501c nonprofit called After the Long Walk, aimed at reducing veteran and specifically EOD veteran suicide. Brother, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing well. How are you, man?
I'm good, dude. It's good to see you. I know,
Yeah.
we've spoken before about doing an interview and kind of getting the word out there. Uh, and here we are, right? Now
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah.
But, before we jump in, let's give your background. So you were in the Army for what, 23 years?
23 years. Yeah.
And Sergeant First Class, right?
Retired sergeant first class. I failed to become a real true boss and stayed in the trenches most of my career.
I think that benefited us in the long
Yeah, I
run. I
think
mean, I
so.
remember seeing you over there at AP Hill, now Fort Walker. But I mean, multiple deployments, right? Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, Kosovo, um, prior 12 Bravo before becoming EOD, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of natural progression there.
Well, no one's perfect, right? But you ended up in the right spot. But what drew you to the Army originally?
I thought about that for a minute, and I think if there was a category in my high school yearbook most likely to join the military, I was probably it. I don't think there was, but I was in the Boy Scouts, and I kind of thrived under organization and leadership and all that and activity. And it is again natural progression from the Boy Scouts to the Army. Um, no one was surprised when I said, "Hey, I'm joining the Army." Oh yeah, we figured, uh, and it was on from there.
Why 12 Bravo?
My recruiter was a 12 Bravo. He was, airborne, had the bloused boots and all the things I didn't know about in high school. And he was a 12 Bravo, and he had mentioned it somewhere along the line. And I have an affinity for firecrackers and fireworks. And, that was the one. The guys at the MEP station, they turned to a page. All right, there's this one, which was 12 Bravo. And then there's this one, which was 12 Bravo. And then there's this one. This one's really cool, which was 12 Bravo. So they kind of duped me into that one. Maybe it was a quota. Maybe it was a fireworks. Who knows?
And then seven years as a 12 Bravo. What was the catalyst to make the transition over to Explosive Ordnance Disposal?
I was at JRTC. I remember the moment. I've been there twice. Once at Fort Chaffee, which makes my back hurt, and once at Fort Polk. And we were attacking a bunker in like the one of the phases towards the middle of the rotation, and somebody threw a grenade into the bunker, and they left the jungle clip on the grenade, and it didn't go off, so they stopped fire and all that. They pulled an infantry battalion off the objective and put us in a safe space. And these two dudes go walking up, flak vest and Kevlar, something in their hand. So they pulled all of us off, and those two dudes got to go in, and they blew it up. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. That those two guys were responsible for the rest of us, and I got interested and pursued that, and just kept pushing until I figured out what it was. And by that time, I was at Fort Lewis, and um, I found the detachment and figured out how to do it, and took the bomb suit test, and the rest is, a big smoking hole.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think obviously I'm biased. I think EOD is the greatest thing in the world. I try to
Absolutely.
interview a lot of EOD techs on here and talk about their experiences. Just talked to Mike Finding a couple weeks back. But I mean, did you fit in? Did you like it? Was it the right choice?
Instantly, it was a mesh. We did a tap suit test instead of a bomb suit test when I was coming in, and I remember vividly that there was another guy taking the test with me, and they had me firemen's carry him down one way or one direction in the compound, and then he had the fireman's carry me in the compound, and he collapsed about halfway through, and I kind of picked him up and brought him to the end. And then they started bumping a volleyball at us, and I just started playing volleyball in the tap suit. And oh, you can get out of that. You're done. And I didn't even know the test was over. I just, all right, we're testing volleyball in the tap suit. It was nuts, but I thought it was great. And even my attached time as it on the job training, that was great. I met a lot of guys that I still talk to this day. So it was really influential, and I knew that was what I was going to do.
And for those people that don't know, what is a tap suit?
A tap suit is a fully encapsulated butyl rubber suit that used for was used for chemical operations. I don't know if you guys use it now or not, but it just is brutal, heavy rubber suit, no air in or out except for a little covered section for your filter. And I mean it's weird, but if you were able to pee in it, it actually cooled you off. So it was amazing in that.
Yeah, I remember I did my my bomb suit test at Fort Bragg, and then we also had to do a chem suit test, so JS list, and
yeah,
man, it was a smoker. It was but we did the bomb suit test in the morning,
and then the JS list in the afternoon.
Yeah, 30-minute break, and then JS list, and it was a smoker. It was the middle of North Carolina in the summer, and it was terrible. But like at the time, if I didn't do that, I was going to go be an 11 Bravo. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just didn't want to do that, right? So like I had to make
right with that.
Yeah, right. I had to make it through this test to get out to the force, and so I did. And we had a guy throw up in the bomb suit, with the helmet with the visor down, and they were like, "If you lift the visor, you fail." And so there's this dude running around with vomit all over his helmet, like leak. And then of course the test ends, and they go to that guy. They're like, "All right, you passed, but you don't pass if you don't clean the suit right now." So you had to clean the suit out. Did you have a chance to deploy as an EOD technician?
Only as an EOD guy.
Okay.
I went to Japan as a 12 Bravo, and we went to Panama with a guard, but it was only for a few weeks or maybe a month at the most, and it wasn't a combat deployment at all as a 12 Bravo.
So everything else was as an EOD technician, Iraq, Afghanistan.
Yeah, we went. We were slated. I moved from Fort Polk to. I got Fort Polk out of school, which was great. If you want to learn how to be a bomb tech, go to Fort Polk because you're running actual incidents all the time. And I was listening to Mike Vining's podcast with you today, and one, how can I follow that? But two, he mentioned he did like 385 incidents in a year-long period, and it wasn't that many incidents at Polk, but it was pretty close. A couple of us were really counting the incidents and getting up there in numbers. But then I went to Moffett Field after that, and we were slated to go to Bosnia as a whole company. The whole team was going to go, and then 9/11 happened, and things changed a little bit there. But a smaller number of us still went to Bosnia, and we did a 6-month tour there in Bosnia for my first deployment. Got back, and then January of 2003, we got back like mid 2002, and January of 2003 we're moving into Iraq, probably 6 months later. So that was really quick turnaround there. Then I had some time off because
I'm sorry, I mean to interrupt, but like, what was that like as an EOD tech right there, 2003? So we're talking, the start of Iraq. What was that like as an EOD technician out there?
So my mission was with the Iraqi survey group. We attached with a artillery unit out of Fort Sill for our security, and we were tasked with escorting the subject matter experts in chemical, nuclear, ballistic missiles, things like that. And we went to sensitive sites and exploited those for whatever we could find. So I wasn't a traditional I was working as an EOD tech, but I was also escorting these guys through these hazardous sites. Don't step on that. Don't step on this. So it was really interesting. I got to learn a lot about those subjects. Well, I learned that a lot of the experts in the field, other than EOD techs, didn't know exactly how chemicals were dispersed from ammunition. Um, they thought it was a big spray tank with somebody pumping it out and like Rambo-esque. But we learned a lot together, and that was fun. And then we learned how to blow up a couple safes and do a bunch of stuff. Paul Culkin was my team member, and we were pretty much on an equal playing field. So there was, you know, if as long as we could see each other, we could operate on a large compound, and
Right.
generally one is none, two is one. But we were able to keep an eye on each other, and we were in yelling distance, so we were never too far from each other. And it was really, really fun. We had a good time.
Yeah, and you did Afghanistan as well, correct?
Yeah, we I did Kosovo before Afghanistan. I did 3 deployments out of Moffett Field,
Wow.
Kosovo for a year, and then went to the schoolhouse for a little while at Redstone, and then came to Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, and took a team, took the 767th over to Afghanistan for a year.
What year was that?
2009, 2010.
Okay, so I would have been getting there right as you guys were leaving. Where were you guys located at?
Um, Initially, I was in Sharana with the first platoon, and then I moved up to Ghazni with the company headquarters, and spent the rest of my time at Ghazni.
So I think we high fived because in 2010 we
Probably.
were out of Sharana, and then of course my team we moved down to Cushmond,
Oh
and
yeah,
pretty much
I was
yeah
looking
had
for that
packed.
picture. Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite the time down there, but in Paktika province. And so, what was your time as an EOD technician like? In Afghanistan.
I, as a platoon leader or a platoon sergeant, pushing the guys out, um, I was kind of jealous because we were having a lot of, running some good incidents. Um, we had one guy was wounded, and that was, shocking. But he's made pretty much full recovery. He still can't do a jumping jack, but he's doing all right. Um, and we really had a good time. We worked pretty well together. And then when I got up to the ops section, I was training guys, and I was in the gun, making sure that my team members were driving well, and my team leaders were, you know, I was just the extra person of that. I just supervising, making sure things went well, and to see them thrive in that combat environment was kind of a feather in my cap. That they were doing well, and they were doing right, and some of them got huge honors. Some of them did some amazing things, um, and that was either on that deployment or afterwards. And then it's just really, really cool to go from you know a bunch of guys put together, and
Yeah,
then mesh,
turning into a
go to
family. I
Gator,
mean,
turn into a
yeah,
family, and deploy and thrive in that environment. That was a good time.
yeah, and I think that was one of my favorite things. That 2010-11 deployment that the 49th, my company, was on. I mean, that really, we had quite a few people directly out of the schoolhouse who jumped into the unit, 3 weeks prior to deploying.
Yeah.
I mean, like I did CIF draw at Bagram, right? I mean, I didn't have anything. I had to get to Afghanistan to get my stuff, and then kind
Awesome.
of, seeing how we've all kind of stuck together over the years, seeing, how people have progressed. It's very rewarding to see how successful the people from that deployment have been, because there's something about that time frame, that 2009, 2008 to 2011, 12 time frame where it's like the EOD techs from that particular time frame, they went on to do great things, right?
Oh yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
maybe
Yeah.
that's just because it's my cohort, so I feel that way. But that was, that was an impressive collection of people, and remains an impressive collection. Um, so let's fast forward a little bit and let's talk about this 501c nonprofit that you helped create, called After the Long Walk. What is that?
Well, in 2015, um, an EOD tech, Army EOD tech, killed himself. Um, and my friend Landon Jackson, um, just had troubles of his own, and he kind of swore and said, let's put a stop to this. We need to do something to stop EOD suicides, whatever we can do. So a few of us got together, and guys from that, from that cohort we were talking about, Adrian White and Dave Grodkin and a number of other guys who are now shakers in the civilian world. We got together and we just did it. We did what we do best. We kind of showed off. I squeezed Burt Reynolds in. We got a phone number, which we still have. It's been the same phone number for all 8 years. We started a Facebook page, started a GoFundMe account, and we just started doing it. We had no idea what we were doing. But since November 2015, we have had two EOD techs, sometimes a spouse, as volunteers for a week-long period, waiting for an EOD tech to call that phone number when they're sad, depressed, angry, need to vent, too drunk to talk to anybody else, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just it's an ear out there in the night, if you will, that an EOD tech can call.
And it's EOD techs, EOD techs manning the phone, right? So it's for absolutely. EOD techs by EOD techs.
Yeah, it's for an EOD tech by an EOD tech, and we figured, the best person to talk to is someone who's been there. So, guys will have trouble talking to a therapist. Guys will have trouble talking to their spouse. Guys will have trouble talking to anybody. They won't have much trouble talking to their bartender, and then an EOD tech is the next best thing.
Right.
And it works. It seems to work. We haven't been perfect, but and that hurts, and we feel that throughout the community. But our wins definitely outweigh our losses.
Yeah, and so let's talk about some of those wins. Obviously not attaching any names to any of them, but I mean, this is a program that works. This is a program that actually works. People are very active on this Facebook page, to the point where, I'm a member of the page, right? And I will see, hey, has anybody had contact with so-and-so? Does anybody have eyes on this person? And then immediately you'll see all this engagement pop up where, hey, I called them yesterday and they weren't doing so good. And then someone else will chime in like, yep, talked to them this morning, not doing so hot, left their phone at the house and they walked away. And then suddenly you have, 15, 20 other people being like, okay, I'm co-located in the area. I'm going to go find him. I'm going to drive over to his house. I'm going to drive, over to his work. And we actually find these people, right?
And it's all organic. It's not command directed. It's not, it's not people telling these guys to do this. It's absolutely just, organic. There's no better word for it. They do it because they're EOD techs, and they do it because they don't want another suicide flashed across Facebook. So it's an amazing thing. I just pulled up a map that we have.
Yeah, I mean, the map you're referring to it's a hot map, right, of every EOD tech that's in the country, right?
Well, it's every EOD tech that offered their name and number.
Right.
So it's, I can look in, let's just look in Crestview. I'll go down to Crestview, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 12 names just around the Crestview, and it's a schoolhouse, and I understand it, but there's a whole bunch of names there, and I can pull out anywhere. I can go to Nebraska. How many EOD techs are there in Nebraska? Well, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. So, I can use this map to get anybody who's willing to go see somebody else in that, logical distance.
Right.
And it's worked so many times. And it's working, like today it's working. It's an amazing tool. And it was really, really simple. My chief technology officer, Matt Cook, I pay him with that title, came up with the idea, and it's worked. For a while, we tried to, do something different where we didn't have people's PII out there. But everybody just balked at that and said, no, I put my name on that map so you can call me. So, all right, we went with it. And now we've got this map that has a point of contact, a number, a Facebook Messenger address, an email, whatever their choice of contact is. And I have never failed to find somebody in an area where I needed an EOD tech. Um, and it's creepy when it happens too, because an EOD tech shows up out of nowhere. Hi, I'm your neighbor.
Yeah.
You didn't
Yeah, I
know
mean,
it.
I've gotten the phone call in the middle of the night from that heat map, be like, hey, you're co-located in this area. Can you go check up on so and so?
Mm-hmm.
And I jumped in my car and I went and I found so and so, right?
Yeah,
And it worked. I think that's the part that is so incredible about it. It's like it's grassroots. It's kind of like crowdsourced behavioral health support. I got a phone call in the middle of the night, said, "Hey, we're looking at the heat map, and you're in this area, and so is in this area. Can you support?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me get in my car and let me go find this person." And me and two other EOD techs found that person.
yeah,
And we escorted that person, to the right venue and got them the help that they needed. And I think that's the telling part here, right? Is that nobody has to do this. This isn't, as you said, it's not command directed. No one's going to force us to do it. Um, but I mean, there's only about 6,000 EOD techs total across all four branches. Like, there's not
mm-hmm.
a lot of us. And so, I don't know if we have the numbers. I do know that anytime there's an EOD suicide in the community, uh, you either know them or you know somebody that knows them. And so it's
Absolutely.
incredibly, incredibly personal when these things happen. And I've seen the wild success of the Facebook page. What's the plan going forward? Is there a plan to grow or expand or, try to pass it off to potentially other MOSs? Have you heard anything like that?
I haven't yet. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. Right now, this moment, we have a survey that's running, and for the video portion of this, I'll drop you a link that you can share with it. But we're doing and I'm going to read this verbatim from one of the creators. We're doing an IRB approved state of the art survey created by an interdisciplinary joint research team with more experience dealing with wicked problems than can be described here. So, what we did is guys actually approached the EOD Warrior Foundation from academia, and they've been published on JSOC University, talking about moral injury and suicidality and things. And these guys are experts in that field, um, and they wanted to help out. And if you watch the Behind the Warrior podcast from Veterans Day 2 years ago, a gentleman named MC Iverson was on there speaking about um, moral injury, and they wanted to figure out why the EOD field and suicide are so interlocked, and how come we have so many suicides within our ranks. And the best way to do that is to do an IRB study. Um, and we created a survey, and we've pushed that survey out to the field. We've had 745 respondents. I might be swagging that a little bit, but it's pretty
It's a big
close.
number.
And really, the demographics really match a lot of Army, a little bit of Navy, a good number of Air Force, very few Marines, and then the reserve components after that. But it kind of matches that. And I actually want to check with the guys and see how close our numbers are. But it's a good number. Our guys are saying we have good data. We're trying to get up to 1,000. We want to get a good number, and we need about 600, or not. We need about 300 more before we can get up to 1,000 bodies. And I'd love to see some more active duty guys take the survey as well, because that'll give us an idea of what's going on in the ranks, as well as what's going on outside the ranks. But once we have that survey done, and then we crunch the data and we give it to the nerds, and the nerds do their thing, and they say, well, this is an obvious cause. We attack that cause, and we just put everything we have towards that, and then take that information and give it to the rest of the world. Give it to the military intelligence community. Give it to the special operations community. Give it to whomever will take it, and if they don't take it, put it in their back pocket, so that they
Yeah.
can find it later.
And so when we talk about moral injury, let's talk about what that is for a second. For those listening or watching that may not understand, the concept, right? So I mean, what is moral injury?
All right. So it's best described in a little bit of visualization. But if you take your fists and you put your fists together, that's roughly the size of your brain. All right. And we know what causes injuries to the brain. TBI is a measurable thing. We concussions and blasts and falls and gunshots and firing a weapon too close in close quarters. All those things can cause a TBI. So we know how to treat that. We may not be able to cure it, but we can recognize it. And then PTSD, you've got you take your one fist away, so you got one fist, and that's roughly the size of your heart. And we know that trauma affects the heart. You get shot, you lose blood, that's traumatic. It affects your heart. Um, you know, so you can kind of see what post-traumatic stress does. Now, use the same hands to show me what your soul looks like, and you can't. Your soul is all around you. It's inside of you. It doesn't. It's not an organ. It's an essence. And a moral injury is a soul injury. It's where your essence is wounded. Say you, as a commanding officer of a EOD unit, send your guys into into a rough spot where they're getting gunfire all the time, and their truck blows up, and you lose half your team that you sent in there. You're going to experience a moral injury because of that, because you sent them there. Or a guy on a watchtower sees a car coming at him. It shows all the signs and signals that it's a suicide bomber running the gate, and he lights it up with a 50 cal. And when he does that, he blows up the car, but it turns out that it was a dad trying to bring his kid to the fob to get help. That's going to be a moral injury for that guy who was shooting. He was doing the absolute right thing. He was doing everything right, and he shot that car like he thought he was supposed to, and it turned out to be wrong. That's going to be a moral injury. So those things really, really are hard to track down. Those, you don't know they're hurting. You can't. Your hormones don't change like they do with a TBI. Your body doesn't change like it can do with a post traumatic stress. It's just hidden. It's absolutely invisible. And getting to the point where we can recognize somebody with a moral injury is a huge success. And that's what we're trying to go through with this study and move forward with that one.
Do you think? I mean, do you think that the military is getting better about it? I mean, I know obviously we're talking about a 501c, a nonprofit, not necessarily part of the military. But I'll tell you, like, the periodic health assessment I took in 2010 versus the post deployment health assessment I took in 2013 versus, then I went to Kosovo in 2020, right? And that was a cake deployment, let me tell you that. But I also had to take a post deployment health assessment after that. And it went from one page in 2010 to 3 pages in 2013 to, like, by the time I took it in 2020, it was 15 pages almost of just, question and answer, and then sliding scales. Um, and so do you think the military is getting better about that? Trying to track this type of stuff down?
I think they're getting more aware. I really do. I work at JSOC now. Nothing cool. Well, it's JSOC, so of course it's cool. But I'm a building manager for one of the buildings on the main compound. And my office with the J4 shop is right in the same proximity as the psych team. And for a brigade element, we've got 3 psychologists plus a behavioral health specialist plus guys tracking all that, and a lot of it's their assessment and selection part, but they're also seeing people every day coming down, so they're making people more aware that, or at least giving them the opportunity to say something about it. Our behavioral medicine or behavioral health specialist, she is booked. Her office is she's always in a session. So I think they're making it more available to people, or more available to service members. And I think service members are taking advantage of that. And it's difficult to command direct that, go see a psychologist. No, I'm going to sit here and be an asshole about it and not tell my psychologist anything. If they're
Yeah.
going and they're actually talking and they're interacting, I think it's great. The chaplain team for JSOC, they're very, very proactive. and they're not preaching. They're really focused on the post traumatic stress and the moral injury, and they're really moving forward. And if JSOC is just a little tiny picture of what the rest of the services are, I think it's going in a correct direction right now.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it holistically, I think, when I joined the Army in 2008, which wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things, 16 years, um, we didn't talk about behavioral health, right? I mean, that was 16 years ago. It was like you didn't go to behavioral health, you didn't talk about behavioral health, and we drank a lot. I mean, like
Yeah,
that's what we did. It's like you deployed, you came back, you drank,
you drank a lot.
and you prep for the next deployment, and then you went on the next deployment, and then rinse, wash, repeat.
Yeah,
um and then, in the last couple of years, really it feels like in the last 5 years the Army has finally turned a corner. And I can only speak to the Army because I'm an Army guy. I hope that the Air Force, Marine Corps, the Navy have done the same. But really turned a corner and made that okay. I'll tell my story. Is the first time I went to behavioral health, I walked in there, I filled out the intake questionnaire, and I like had a panic attack because I read the fine print. Right, the fine print was like, "Hey, man, if you disclose certain things, your career's over." And I walked out. I mean, I straight up
yeah,
just I did the intake form. I was sitting in the lobby. I was waiting to get called, and I said, "You know what? Not for me." And I got up and I walked out. And luckily, I had a good provider who called me and said, "Hey, man, saw you did the intake, and then you weren't there. Like, what's up with that?" And I was like, "Oh, like I don't really want to talk about this shit." Um, but then they called me back in. We had a really good conversation that kind of opened my eyes to behavioral health. I only got to do a couple of sessions out in Germany, but then when I came down here to Florida, I got into the TBI clinic, and I started realizing, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about right now, right? Moral injury, traumatic brain injury, just a lot of stuff, right? And I was terrified. I was petrified. I was, if I go and I disclose all of this stuff,
yeah.
my career is going to end. Uh, and guess what didn't happen? Like here
The
I am,
career
right?
didn't end. You're
Oh,
escorting
not
generals to,
yeah, right.
you're
Like
you're
not
you're
only,
working for the
not only,
Department of Defense, going to
yeah,
the team of the
yeah,
year as the spokesman.
yeah. Like
You're
not only did
yeah,
my career not end, in a lot of ways, I became a better leader for it. I kind
yeah,
of was able to understand where people were coming from, and be a little more empathetic, because when I was a junior soldier, no one did that for me, right? There was no like, "Hey man, go get checked out." It was, "Hey man, let's go get a drink." Right?
yep,
And like that's how you opened up, and then like you did that, and then like, okay, now we're never going to talk about this ever again. And
yeah,
then rinse, wash,
exactly.
repeat, right? What,
The
I'm sorry, go ahead, man.
yeah, the great thing now, and there's publications on it, and I can't quote the policy letter number, but if you look it up, you'll find it quickly. Mental health and your top secret clearance. Because I'm still rocking the top secret clearance as well, and things that affect your clearance can be related to mental health, but it's how you deal with those things. If you're drinking to cure your ailments and you're getting a DUI, or you're not paying your bills because you're drinking too much, or you're just not showing up to work, or you're doing terrible things, yeah, your mental health is going to affect your clearance. But if you deal with those things, and if you tell your security guys, hey, I'm seeing a therapist about this because of this. Okay, cool. You're working on it. You're working on yourself. You're not going to lose your clearance when you're working on it. But if you just let it fester and it just gets fucked, that's where you lose your clearance. You let it take the best, get the best of you. So we try to get in the way of that. We see somebody, rolling downhill, we're going to jump in front of them and stop them, and do our best to get in front of that, that snowball before they start fucking their clearance.
Yeah.
Because that's the last thing we want to do is associate loss of security clearance with mental, first aid. So we try to scream that as loud as we can, that it's not, you go into the doctor is not going to affect your clearance. You not going to the doctor would have a more, a more dire effect than anything.
Do you think there's a reason that, you know, that we see a spike, in EOD suicide. And I know we talked a little bit about moral injury, but if we look at the core mission of EOD, which is the protection of personnel and property, those two things, right?
Mhm.
And maybe I'm completely wrong, but in the last couple of years, kind of the conclusion I've come to is we spend our entire career taking care of personnel and property, but never ourselves, right? Never ourselves. It's never about us. And I think it's the reason that things like After the Long Walk resonate so much within the EOD community because, again, it's not about us. It's about protecting personnel. It's about going out there and taking care of somebody else. But do you think at the same time that causes an issue for EOD technicians to raise their hand and come up on the net and say, hey, man, I'm having a really rough time right now? I mean, what's kind of your take on that?
I think a lot of what happens. Well, one, alcohol, as we've mentioned, it's a cultural norm for us. But when we drink too much, we get to a spot where emotions just change, and there's no checks and no balances, and you can just snowball there. And I think because alcohol is such a you know I don't want to say a part of EOD, but it's ingrained. The culture of drinking, um, and partying and all that has to be looked at significantly. Um, but I think one of the other causes is in combination probably, um, is maybe the lack of protection. You're protecting people. You're out there. You know you're paladins. They didn't choose that nomiker for just any reason. In Afghanistan, you're protecting the road. You're protecting the crusaders that are going on their thing. So when we take that away and we're no longer have a war to fight, we no longer have anyone to protect. What do we do? Um, and we're trying to fill that void. And if we can't fill that void with something that meets that need, then what else is there? So I think that's a big issue that some people don't find something to replace the high that being an EOD tech is. I think that's a huge. I think that's one of the main causes of EOD suicide.
Would you do it all again, man? I mean, 23
Absolutely.
years
Oh yeah.
in the Army. You do it all again?
If I could find EOD before I did the 12 Bravo, I'd probably try that first. But I also really like, um, I love guys off the street who don't know anything, and you can teach them. My first job, my second job out of the Army, I had no idea what it was all about, and that's what they wanted. They wanted somebody with no clue what they're doing, so they could train me and not have to worry about any bad habits. And I love that about an off the street EOD tech. I like that, but I also like the the discipline that a prior service soldier had, going into EOD. So they had some of the knowledge of how the Army works, just a little tiny bit. They know when they're complaining, and they know when they should stop complaining. So I would probably go 12 Bravo and then do EOD school maybe a little bit sooner, but I'd do it all again. It was a blast.
We hear a lot, on the news and on social media with people saying, I wouldn't recommend this to my kids, And so I guess it's a question I try to ask everybody now when I talk to them on here. Would you recommend the Army or the military to somebody that, you're talking to?
I do it all the time. I think even just to get the taste, just do 4 years, do 3 years, just to. I hated every second I was in the Army. Just so you know that you hate it. Um, but just go and see if it's for you. And who knows? They may challenge you. You may, um, find something that you didn't know existed, like explosive ordnance disposal. Who knew about that? Um, and I tell people to go all the time. Sometimes I suggest they go for the. Some guys I suggest go to the Air Force. Some guys I
It's a
suggest go to
wise
the Marine
choice.
Corps for obvious reasons. But I would absolutely send them to a service of their choosing.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one, right? I joined for 3 years and I'm coming up on 16, and I think it's the best choice I've ever made. Jeff, dude, thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk and tell the story of after the long walk. Hopefully, this reminds everybody, right? Like mental health is your responsibility, but it's all of our responsibility. It's our responsibility to check up on our friends and the people that we work with and just make sure that people are doing okay, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so thank you for taking the time to sit down. Thank you for taking the time to talk about After the Long Walk. I think it's an absolutely fantastic nonprofit that you guys have. I try to be active on there. I try to participate as often as I can. You guys are saving lives, and not just like in a metaphorical sense. Like you guys are actually saving lives. So, man, hey, thank you so much for taking the time to come on, and I look forward to talking again, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll see you soon in Florida, I'm sure.
Take care, dude.
Take it easy, bro.